Hollywood isn't a city of dreams. It's a goddamn rendering plant where black kids' hopes get ground into dust before you can even say Oscar. They love you as long as you bring in cash and grin for the camera, playing the perfect good black boy for white families. But the second you stumble, get hooked, or open your mouth at the wrong moment, the industry tosses you in the trash like an empty beer can. We stare at those glowing faces on magazine covers, but backstage there's so much filth, betrayal, and ruined lives it makes you sick. Today I'm dumping the truth on the table about the ones the system chewed up and spit out. And trust me, there aren't any innocent lambs on this list. Just hard reality, seasoned with greed, drugs, and a total lack of brakes. Let's start with one of the most epic dives into the abyss, a fall that still reeks of cheap booze and hopelessness. Orlando Brown. Remember that chubby, relentlessly upbeat kid from the Disney hit That's So Raven? He played Eddie Thomas, the main character's best friend, and if we're being honest, he carried half the show's comedy on his back. The guy had everything: charisma, a great voice, perfect timing, and an army of fans. It should have been simple. Keep your head down, build a career, drop a little rap on the side, cash the checks. But no, Orlando decided life as a Disney sweetheart was too tame, and in 2007, the moment the show ended, he slammed the gas straight toward the nearest cliff. And the irony is, Hollywood is packed with white child actors who do wild, unforgivable shit and still get a second, third, 10th chance. But if you're black and you start acting up, you're done. Though with Orlando, it wasn't even about race at a certain point. The man just snapped completely. His arrest record is longer than the credits in a Marvel movie. Drug possession, DUI, domestic violence, and even, for fuck's sake, burglary. In Las Vegas, the cops practically greet him like family. He didn't just make a mistake, he booked himself a full tour through every circle of hell. Instead of landing big roles, he became a regular fixture in police reports and interrogation room clips, looking like someone who hasn't slept in a week and is deep into the hard stuff. In interviews, he's admitted he was heavy on alcohol and hardcore drugs, and that's a one-way ticket with no return. You know what's the worst part? He actually had talent. He could sing, rap, make people laugh until their stomachs hurt. But once you're labeled unreliable, the big studios treat you like radioactive waste. Nobody wants to sign a contract with a guy who might miss a shoot because he decided to throw hands with his girlfriend or go score another hit. Hollywood is a business, cold, calculating, and it doesn't give a damn about your sensitive soul. These days, Orlando pops up on sketchy podcasts talking absolute nonsense, swearing he's been clean for 4 years, that he's out of rehab and wants to be there for his kids. But look into his eyes in those recent videos. There's nothing there. The industry doesn't believe him anymore, and the few roles he gets in low-budget garbage are just sad little reminders of what he could have been. He went from star to living meme. People clown on him, and that might be the cruelest punishment of all. Studios deleted his number, and his old Disney friends tried not to say his name out loud, like it's contagious. Orlando Brown is the perfect example of how fast you can go from icon to trash the moment you decide the rules don't apply to you. And if you think it's only drugs and cops that can bury a career, you're dead wrong. Sometimes all it takes is saying your wrong opinions a little too loudly. If you thought Orlando was just a sad story about a kid who got hooked and fell apart, buckle up, because now we're getting into a case of clinical level betrayal of your own roots for a paycheck that still ended up getting voided. Stacy Dash. Remember that chocolate candy from Clueless? In the 90s, everybody was jerking off to her, from Harlem to Beverly Hills. She was a style icon, the embodiment of black beauty that slid perfectly into a world of spoiled white rich kids without losing a bit of shine. Dion Davenport was that girl. Every one of our sisters wanted to be her. You think, live it up, you're a teen movie legend. Every door is open. But Stacy decided being just an actress was too small time. And in 2014, she took a leap of faith straight into a vat of shit by signing on as a political commentator at Fox News. That's where the real circus started. There's a special breed in Hollywood, people who'll gladly dump filth on their own as long as the white men in expensive suits pat them on the head and call them one of the good ones. Stacy became exactly that, a pocket-sized black woman for conservatives. She didn't just share opinions, she scorched the earth of everything the black community holds sacred. This genius, dead serious, said Black History Month was bullshit and should be canceled because it was supposedly segregation. She took shots at Obama and even tried to come for the Holy of Holies, Beyonce. Just picture the audacity. Sitting on a network that spent years stirring up hate, telling people black folks are to blame for all their own suffering. And the funniest part, Stacy tried so hard to be Fox's favorite that even they eventually went, "Hey, sweetheart, that's too much." They suspended her after she said, in a nasty, blunt way, that President Obama didn't give a damn about terrorism. After that, they simply didn't renew her contract. And suddenly, she was stuck in the most humiliating spot imaginable. The black community cursed her out and erased her, calling her an Uncle Tom in a skirt. And the white conservatives she'd been screaming herself hoarse for, they left her out in the cold the second she stopped being useful. Classic story. Sell your identity and end up with no money, no reputation, and no friends. When it finally hit her that her career was going to hell, Stacy suddenly woke up. In later interviews, she started mumbling that it had all been a role, that she was playing the mean conservative black woman because that's what her life's TV script demanded. Like, "Sorry, I didn't mean it. I was just fulfilling a contract." But Hollywood is the kind of place where they might forgive murder, addiction, theft, anything. Political toxicity and betrayal of your own audience? Never. Directors and casting people avoid her like she's carrying the plague. Nobody wants to hire an actress whose face on screen makes viewers want to spit at the TV. Now she's trying to bleach her image, posting apology videos, begging for a second chance, but that train left a long time ago, and the tracks got ripped up and sold for scrap. Her big screen career is officially dead, buried 10 meters down. She wanted to be the voice of reason. Instead, she became a punchline. A living cautionary tale about how not to build a career if you don't want to end up spending your last years hawking sketchy creams on social media for pennies. Stacy Dash is living proof that sometimes silence isn't just golden, it's the only way to keep your ass warm. But if Stacy was just talking nonsense on air, hoping for a nod from rich white uncles, our next guy went way further. He decided to turn his life into a full-blown crime series, with fake evidence and absolutely terrible acting, right out on the streets of Chicago. If you thought Stacy Dash was rock bottom, get ready. We're about to knock from underneath it, and up crawls Jussie Smollett, the man who managed to pull off the most humiliating, brain-dead career suicide in modern Hollywood history. This guy didn't just stumble. He took the loaded gun of his own success and fired straight into his face, after making damn sure the camera was rolling and the whole world was watching the circus. Jussie was flying high. He played Jamal Lyon on the mega-popular series Empire. People loved him, his voice, his acting, the fact that he was a living symbol of black queer success. But apparently, it wasn't enough for that narcissistic bastard to be a star. He wanted to be a martyr, an icon of the struggle, the patron saint of inclusivity. In January 2019, Jussie comes out with a story that makes any sane person's hair stand on end. Supposedly, at 2 in the morning in snowy Chicago, when normal people are home because it's a freezing hell outside, he was attacked by 2 white guys in MAGA hats. He told the cops they beat him, poured bleach on him, threw a noose around his neck, screaming racist and homophobic slurs while he was going to get a Subway sandwich. Let that sink in. Chicago, polar vortex, night, and out of nowhere, 2 Trump fans appear carrying a rope and bleach, just hoping to randomly bump into the star of Empire. The funniest part is Jussie believed in his own specialness so much, he didn't even bother to come up with a scenario that sounded remotely real. At first, liberal Hollywood rushed to comfort him, politicians fired off tweets, and Smollett basked in the spotlight as a victim of hate. But the truth crawled out faster than he could wipe off the makeup. Chicago police, who don't earn their paychecks for nothing, quickly figured out the white racists were actually the Osendero brothers, 2 black bodybuilders who'd worked as extras on Empire and trained at the same gym as Jussie. Turns out this genius allegedly paid them $3,500 to stage the attack, even held a rehearsal and bought the rope himself. It was the fiasco of the decade. He was charged for lying to police, and the whole country watched him go from rising star to national punchline. The ugliest part is what he did to people who actually lived through real hate and real violence. He cheapened their pain, using racial trauma like a prop for publicity and, if you believe the rumors, leverage for a fatter contract. Later, his conviction was overturned on procedural grounds, not because anyone suddenly decided he was some innocent choir boy, but because the process got tangled in legal technicalities. Either way, for Hollywood, he's radioactive now. Studios want nothing to do with him because Smollett has become shorthand for deception and manipulation. His character Jamal got cut from Empire without mercy, and since then, he hasn't landed a single respectable role. He tries to direct little projects in back alleys, but it's pure agony. Jussie Smollett proved you can be talented as hell, but the moment you decide to play the victim card for your ego, the industry will grind you into powder. He wanted to go down in history as a hero. Instead, he went down as a clown who got tangled in his own noose of lies. But while one actor was inventing fairy tales about an attack, another star decided to go to war with the real titans of the industry. Figuring an Oscar in your pocket means you're allowed to spit in the face of Oprah Winfrey herself. Now brace yourself, because we're about to dig into Monique, a woman who proved to the whole world that in Hollywood, an Oscar isn't always a golden ticket to an easy life. Sometimes it's a goddamn tombstone on your career. This story is the purest example of what happens when you refuse to kiss the ring, refuse to play the local boss's fake, smiling, hypocritical games. In 2009, she delivered a performance in Precious so brutal and undeniable that critics were practically drooling, and the Academy had no choice but to hand her the statue. You'd think that's it. You're at the top, bitch. Order the limos, pick your roles, live like royalty. But Monique decided she was too real to follow the rules of that snake pit. It started with one simple thing. She refused to work for free. After Precious came out, they started shoving her everywhere. Fly to Cannes, fly to London, promote the film, grin, wave, play nice. And Monique was like, listen, where's the money? My contract doesn't say I have to jet around the world for free and kiss producers' asses. And honestly, on a human level, she was 100% right. But Hollywood doesn't run on what's fair. In Hollywood, if you're a black actress who just got crowned, you're expected to be a grateful little yes woman and do whatever Oprah Winfrey and Tyler Perry tell you to do. And the moment Monique told them to go to hell with their unpaid promotion tour, the real punishment began. She got thrown onto an unspoken blacklist overnight. The powerful people she thought were friends, Lee Daniels, Oprah, Tyler Perry, turned their backs like she'd never existed. Monique didn't stay quiet either. She fired back, accusing them of betrayal, saying they were helping the system keep black women in their place. She said it straight. She'd been blackballed because she refused to be convenient. It was ego versus the machine, and the machine, that bitch, started winning. Roles vanished, offers dried up. The woman who just won an Oscar was suddenly on the sidelines, turning her anger into stand-up bits and telling anyone who'd listen how the industry punishes you for having the spy. And the irony? She didn't just complain. She swung at a giant, Netflix. In 2019, she filed a lawsuit after they offered her a pathetic $500,000 for a comedy special, while white actresses or top-tier comics like Amy Schumer or Chappelle were getting tens of millions. She called it what she believed it was, race and gender bullshit. And she had the guts to push it all the way. Netflix ended up settling, money changed hands, the scandal got smoothed over, but the label stuck. Trouble. Difficult. A problem. That mess cost her 13 years of her career. 13 years. 13. Only recently did she finally make peace with Lee Daniels and start working again. But you can't get back the years when she should have been at her absolute peak. Monique is living proof that in Hollywood, your principles are worth exactly what you're willing to lose for them. She chose dignity over being Oprah's pocket black woman, and the industry punished her with full cruelty. She may have won in court, but she lost the game called the Hollywood dream, ending up an outcast, holding a gold statue she's got nobody left to show. But if Monique was fighting for her rights and her dignity, our next guy managed to blow one of the fattest roles in Marvel history for a much simpler reason. His greed and ego were bigger than his common sense. Now let's talk about Terrence Howard. This man is living proof that in Hollywood, your ego can eat your career faster than you can say Oscar. There was a time when Terrence wasn't just an actor, he was king of the hill, the guy studios practically worshipped. Think back to Hustle and Flow. Pure sex, pure talent, the kind of performance that earned him that Oscar nomination fair and square. Then came Crash, and then, holy hell, the first Iron Man. Terrence was the original James Rhodes, the first War Machine, standing shoulder to shoulder with Robert Downey Jr. back when the Marvel machine was still in diapers. But somewhere along the line, Terrence apparently decided he was the center of the universe and the whole superhero conveyor belt would stall without him. When it came time for the sequel, he flipped into God mode and started throwing his weight around over money. He said himself the studio wanted to slash his pay hard so they could fatten other pockets, and he basically told them to shove it. And what happened? Hollywood doesn't reward defiance, especially not if you're black and you start asking for too much. Marvel kicked him to the curb and replaced him with Don Cheadle without even blinking. From that moment on, the clouds started rolling in over his career, and it wasn't just about greed. Here's the thing. Terrence has always had a reputation for being, to put it politely, a nightmare to work with. In the industry, the word that followed him was difficult, and his personal life turned into an endless tabloid soap opera where there isn't a single hero in sight. He had brutal conflicts with ex-wives, court battles, accusations of domestic violence. The wild part, both funny and sad, is that Howard has admitted to some of it in interviews, describing his life as an unhealthy space. Hollywood bosses are hypocrites, sure, but when you're basically confirming with your own mouth that you're toxic, they'd rather keep you at arm's length than step into the next scandal. And Terrence didn't stop there. He decided the best way to reclaim his throne was to sue everyone into the ground. He filed lawsuits against Fox, the network behind Empire, and against his own talent agency, claiming he'd been underpaid. Seriously? You're already on thin ice, and now you're biting the hand that feeds you? Add tax problems on top of that, reports that the government accused him of owing a pile of money, and now you've got the full package. When you've got domestic violence allegations, tax mess, and a constant soundtrack of "they didn't pay me what I deserve," major studios look at you like a radioactive landfill. And that's where he ended up. A man who could have been cashing blockbuster checks on Avengers-level films, reduced to scraping by on what people call the Chitlin circuit. Small, out-of-the-way venues where there's no real money and no global spotlight. He's admitted those legal wars and that unstable reputation slammed the doors on big Hollywood. It's the classic story of a talented black man burying himself alive, getting high on his own myth, thinking the system's rules didn't apply to him. Now he sits on the sidelines watching other people take his roles and his checks, while all he's got left is suing the ghosts of his past. But at least Terrence is still fighting, still snapping back, still trying to prove something in court. Our next guy? He got an Oscar and decided that meant he could do literally anything. So he started putting his hands where they damn well didn't belong. Cuba Gooding Jr. God, what a rise, and what a humiliating, rotten, stinking fall. In 1996, he stood on that stage with a golden statue in his hands and yelled for the whole world to hear, "Show me the money." And Hollywood really did. After Jerry Maguire, Cuba was everywhere. He was the black golden boy everybody wanted. Spielberg, Ridley Scott, you name it. He was charisma and energy wrapped in the kind of black swagger Hollywood loves packaging and selling to white households. It felt like the red carpet had been rolled out for him for eternity. But Cuba, apparently, decided that once you've got an Oscar, the laws of physics, morality, and basic common sense no longer apply. The irony is he started burying himself long before the cops ever came knocking. You know what he did after the triumph? He started turning his nose up at offers from great directors. This genius rejected roles that could have made him a legend on Denzel Washington's level, and instead he chose to star in such garbage it's embarrassing to even call it B-movie territory. Snow Dogs, Boat Trip. Seriously, man? You traded an Oscar for goofy dog faces and bargain bin family comedies. His career began to dim, slowly, steadily bleeding momentum. By the mid-2000s, he'd gone from superstar to a guy who'd show up in anything as long as there was a check, a meal, and maybe a pack of cigarettes waiting at the end of the day. But the real disaster hit in 2019, and it wasn't some one-time mistake. It was a full sewage main bursting. More than 20 women, think about that, more than 20, came forward and said the same thing. He groped us without consent, grabbed breasts, acted like a horny predator in nightclubs. New York headlines were filled with his face in handcuffs. And these weren't just whispers. It was a pattern, a system, a whole ugly routine. Cuba went from crowd favorite to the kind of person who turns any project into a PR nightmare. After a long legal slog, the champion ended up pleading guilty. Yeah, he negotiated down to a lesser charge to avoid real time behind bars, got stuck with programs, counseling, apology letters, whatever the package was. But in the eyes of the industry, he became radioactive. You know what's nastiest about this story? Cuba kept trying to play the victim to the bitter end. Even when surveillance footage surfaced showing him behaving like an animal, he kept flashing that signature Hollywood smile. He even paid a settlement in a civil case brought by a woman who accused him of rape, anything to keep it away from a jury. Classic move, throw money at it and pray everyone forgets. But Hollywood, hypocritical as it is terrified of cancel culture now. No major studio is signing a contract with an actor dragging a trail like that behind him. His reputation isn't damaged, it's ashes. Now, in 2024, he tries to act like everything's fine, popping up in tiny projects nobody watches and talking about second chances. Second chance? What second chance when 24 women accused you? Cuba Gooding Jr. is a walking lesson in how to have everything and still lose it all because you can't keep your hands to yourself and you think fame makes you untouchable. He asked them to show him the money, and in the end, they showed him the door. And that door slammed so hard, the echo is still bouncing around the Hollywood hills. Now he's just another name on the list of people who thought fame was a license to be a pig. But if Cuba was just getting handsy in clubs, our next guy was a full-blown style icon on TV, until his personal demons turned his life into a crime show so filthy no lawyer can scrub it clean. If you think falling from the Hollywood Olympus is always a slow glide downward, take one look at Gary Dourdan. This man didn't just fall. He went into a high-speed nosedive, scattering what was left of his reputation, his money, and his brain cells all over the way down. Remember CSI, Crime Scene Investigation? Gary played Warwick Brown, the charismatic, stylish, razor-smart investigator with eyes you could drown in. For 8 seasons, he was the face of one of the biggest shows on the planet. For 8 years, the money poured in. NAACP Image Awards rained down on him, and fans were ready to sell a kidney for a single look. He was at the top, damn it, and all he had to do was one simple thing. Don't be a complete degenerate in real life. But the irony is, the guy who solved crimes on screen turned into one giant walking piece of evidence off screen. It started in 2008 when Gary got arrested in Palm Springs. And no, it wasn't some parking ticket. The cops found the full gentleman's set in his car. Heroin, cocaine, ecstasy. The whole ugly buffet sitting right there in the vehicle. Some charges were later dropped, sure, but for the industry, it was the first loud, unmistakable warning shot. Hollywood can ignore your mess as long as you're profitable, but the moment you start looking like a corner junkie, producers get nervous. Not long after, CSI killed off his character quickly and cleanly, and Gary was left on his own, living on freedom that tasted bitter as hell. You'd think he learned something, not a chance. In 2011, Dourdan decided one drug scandal wasn't enough, and he stepped into something that smelled like real rock. He got arrested for drug possession again, but that was just the opening act. That same year, he was charged with felony battery against his ex-girlfriend. This heartthrob reportedly broke the woman's nose in a drunk or drugged-up rage. You get it, right? Poisoning yourself is one thing. Wreck your own life if you want. But the moment you start breaking bones on someone smaller than you, you're officially trash. He ended up with 5 years of probation, and that was the final nail in the coffin of his career. Then came 2012, the tragic punchline. Gary filed for bankruptcy. A man who'd made millions off one of the most successful TV series in history admitted he didn't have enough money to pay his bills. He was buried in debt, his property went up for auction, and he turned into a ghost of what he used to be. Hollywood is business. Nobody's investing in an actor who might not show up tomorrow because he's either high out of his mind or sitting in a cell for beating someone. Warwick Brown died on the show, and Gary Dourdan was left to drift through low-budget indie films that only his relatives and 3 random people online ever watch. The nastiest part? He had a chance. He had the face that opens doors and the kind of talent that made people believe every word out of his mouth. And he traded it for a hit and the feeling of being some tough macho man swinging his fists at a woman. Now he pops up in interviews sometimes, talking about how he beat addiction and how he's growing spiritually. But the truth is, in Hollywood, his name is basically shorthand for unreliable. No major studio is giving him even a third-tier role, because the reputation of an addict and an abuser is a stain you can't wash off with any PR campaign. He became a living reminder that you can be king on screen and a complete nobody in real life at the same time. But while Gary Dourdan was wrecking his life with fists and powder, another actor managed to bury his career at the height of fame just by not knowing when to shut his filthy mouth during a conflict with coworkers on set. Just look at this goddamn hypocrisy. Isaiah Washington was riding the absolute crest of the wave when he played Dr. Preston Burke on Grey's Anatomy, one of the highest rated shows on the planet, and he wasn't just background furniture, he was a major player with a massive fan base. A serious, charismatic surgeon who made women melt and made producers count profits. It should have been easy. Sit there in the white coat, keep a smart face, and rake in money for the rest of your life. But no. Isaiah decided his ego mattered more than his ABC contract, and in 2007, his Hollywood fairy tale turned into a full-blown shitstorm because of one stupid argument on set. It started with him getting into it with Patrick Dempsey. And fine, if they just thrown a couple punches like regular men, whatever. But in the middle of the fight, Washington spit out a homophobic slur that a lot of people believed was aimed at another coworker, T.R. Knight. And here's the irony that makes the whole thing even uglier. After that scandal, Knight officially came out. But Isaiah, apparently thinking he was the king of trolling or just a certified dumbass, didn't shut his mouth and run to PR to patch the damage. Instead, he walked right up to the press at the Golden Globes, and while trying to prove he never said it, he repeated the exact same word on camera. That was the point-blank shot to his own career. The funniest part of this mess? He apologized, but it was already too late. ABC simply didn't renew his contract, and Washington got booted from the series faster than a champagne cork. Studios don't give a damn about your talent if you turn into a toxic asset that stains their image. After that, his personal hell started. Isaiah himself has said he lost everything, couldn't afford an agent, couldn't afford a publicist, and the big studios just stopped picking up the phone when he called. Hollywood is the kind of place that will chew you alive for the wrong word, especially if you're a black actor who decides to step outside the lines of political correctness. Yeah, in 2014, they dragged him back to Grey's for one episode just to neatly close out Christina Yang's storyline, but that was charity, not a return to the big leagues. He did land a lead role on The 100 on the CW and worked there for 4 years, but let's be real, going from a blockbuster network hit to teen sci-fi is like trading a Mercedes for an old bike. The industry delivered its verdict. Talent is talent, but the brand of homophobe plus loudmouth troublemaker in modern Hollywood is a scarlet letter no role can cover. Isaiah wanted to prove he was right, and all he proved is that his own tongue is his worst enemy, the thing that cost him millions and robbed him of any chance at becoming a true legend. And while Washington was trying to scrub those long quotes off his name through interviews and legal talk, another legendary black actor from the 90s decided state laws and the tax code were just suggestions for suckers, and paid for it with his freedom. Wesley Snipes. Now there was a man who really was king of that damn world in the 90s. If you think the whole superhero craze started with Iron Man or Captain America, you're seriously mistaken. Blade, for fuck's sake, was the first black superhero who proved comic book movies could be dark, stylish, and bring in mountains of cash. Snipes didn't just play a vampire hunter, he was the icon. Leather jacket, sword, that stare that made producers' wallets start itching. He sat at the top of Hollywood's food chain back when Marvel was still flirting with bankruptcy. You'd think, man, you've got everything. Fame, street respect, legendary status, and checks with a stupid number of zeros. But Wesley decided the laws of physics and economics didn't apply to him, and at some point, his harmony with the spirit world crashed straight into the brutal reality of the IRS. The irony is, Blade could slice vampires by the dozen, but you can't ward off the IRS with garlic and silver. Those guys are worse than bloodsuckers. In 2008, they came down on him for forgetting to file federal tax returns for years. And we're not talking about some petty parking fines. This was systematic, big league ignoring of the government. The court didn't care about his acting resume and handed him 3 years in prison. Snipes actually did time, served 28 months, and didn't get out until 2013. And that's when Hollywood showed its real face. As long as you're profitable and clean, you're family, you're a buddy, you're everyone's best friend. But the moment you put on that orange jumpsuit, you become radioactive trash nobody wants to stand next to. And the taxes were only the tip of the iceberg. For years, rumors have been floating around that working with Snipes was an extreme sport for masochists. It got especially ugly on the set of Blade Trinity. People said Wesley went completely off the rails, sat in his trailer, communicated with the director only through handwritten notes, and even refused to open his eyes on camera, which supposedly meant they had to add them in during post-production with CGI. He fought with cast, fought with crew, disrupted shooting days, acted like he was the Messiah and everyone else was dust under his boots. That kind of behavior doesn't get forgiven forever, even if you're a major star, especially once your box office starts slipping. Hollywood has an unwritten rule. You can be an asshole as long as you make billions, but if you're an asshole who just got out of prison, you're not a star anymore. You're just an unemployed asshole. When he got out, the world had changed. The era of polished, Disney slick heroes had arrived, and dark, complicated Snipes, dragging his baggage, didn't fit the glossy picture anymore. Sure, his old buddy Stallone brought him into The Expendables 3, and he showed up in Coming to America, but let's be honest, those were crumbs off the table. A former A-list titan was now taking second and third tier roles in projects most people barely noticed. His moment passed. The industry swapped him out for younger and, more importantly, more obedient guys. Snipes became a living lesson. If you think being badass on screen gives you the right to spit on the law and treat people like dirt, Hollywood will remind you real quick that you're just a hired worker, replaceable with a snap of the fingers. But while Wesley was trying to reconnect with the spirit world after doing time, another talented guy from the 90s discovered that in Hollywood, you can get written off simply for refusing to play the same black guy from the hood in every damn movie. Listen, if you thought being insanely talented and charismatic was enough to stay on top in Hollywood, Loren Tate is your cold shower. In the 90s, that man was everywhere. He was on fire. You remember him in Menace to Society and Dead Presidents, and then Love Jones, where he played that brooding poet every girl in the theater fell for. He was an icon. It looked like every door was wide open for him, but the industry decided otherwise. The irony is, Tate didn't flame out on drugs, didn't go to prison, didn't beat anybody on camera. He just committed Hollywood's mortal sin for a black actor. He wanted more than the same recycled bullshit. Ghetto stories, gangsters, the same boxed-in roles over and over. The system loves stuffing black actors into a handful of neat little categories and keeping them there for decades. At some point, Lorenz basically said, fuck that. I want to tell real, layered stories about black life that actually mean something. And what do you think happens when you start demanding representation instead of playing along? The big studios quietly cross your name off the list for leading roles in their shiny blockbuster machine. Loren stopped being the convenient golden boy, and his big screen momentum slammed on the brakes. Instead of becoming the next Will Smith-level superstar, he became the kind of actor who works steadily but doesn't get invited to the A-list table anymore. He didn't disappear, though. He found his lane on TV, especially in Power, where he killed it as a politician. Fans were genuinely happy to see him back, and the performance was strong. But let's be honest, it still wasn't the level of fame and heat he could have had after that monster start in the 90s. He chose dignity. He chose to fight for how black people get shown on screen, and for that, Hollywood punished him by denying him the status of a true leading man in major films. He survived and built a solid career on his own terms, sure, but his story is a clear example of how this industry puts you in a box and how damn hard it is to climb out without losing a fortune and a whole lot of power along the way.